All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show at Levi's Stadium as we do a recap of everything that happened down here on Thursday in 49er land. Well, we didn't get to see a ton of practice, but we got to see 4 periods, and Jauan Jennings, I thought, was moving around really well. He's battling back from that ankle injury. We'll see what they list his status as, but I thought he moved really, really well. He caught the ball today nicely. CMC was moving around. I thought, he was showing good footwork and he looked pretty explosive. He wasn't going 100%, but I'd say he was jogging at 75%, and he looked pretty good. And then I think Brandon Ayuk is starting to shake off some of the rust. Ayuk looked good at practice today as well with some of the route running that we saw. A couple things that we definitely want to get into. One was Mike Silver had an interesting story today in the Chronicle that said that the Niners approached the Raiders in that whole deal with Ayuk, where they're going to get picks from the Steelers and turn around and flip those picks for another receiver. And Silver's got a source that says that the Niners approached the Raiders about a trade for their 6-year veteran wide receiver, Jakobi Meyers, who last year had 71 receptions for 807 yards and 8 touchdowns. Didn't realize Meyers scored that many touchdowns last year, but he had a really good year. He's a good route runner. He's got great hands. Of course, this deal never came together. Ayuk signed with the 49ers, 4 years, $120 million, and he stayed. The Steelers' draft picks, of course, stayed with them, but the talk was that the Niners were going to try to spin those draft picks to a third team for a replacement receiver. How would this have made the Niners different? Well, I just think Ayuk's a lot more dynamic than Jakobi Meyers. Meyers, though, is a solid, underrated receiver, and it's probably why the Raiders didn't want to move him. But he's an underrated receiver, but he's not Brandon Ayuk. He's not anything close. He's not nearly as dynamic. So either way, the Raiders rebuffed the Niners' trade efforts. The Niners keep Ayuk, sign him to a deal. Ayuk on Monday against the Jets caught 2 balls for 28 yards. He dropped a touchdown in the end zone. Would-be touchdown. They targeted him 5 times. He said after the game that he didn't want to watch the film, or he wasn't excited to watch the film because he didn't feel like he played to his standards. So it's going to take a few weeks. Let's be honest. It's going to take a few weeks before Brandon can shake off that rust and really look like Ayuk. And who knows? It might take half the year to get to the level that he was at last year. He had a tremendous camp last year. He rolled into the season in a totally dominant fashion. He's not there yet. He's the same guy, but he's not at the same level, and it's going to take a while. So I wouldn't expect to see Ayuk playing at the level that you saw him play at last year until probably around Thanksgiving. That's just the reality of the situation. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my guess from what I've seen this summer. I thought something yesterday that Nick Bosa said to us was really interesting. He said to us just plainly that the Minnesota Vikings are better than the Jets, and he probably was speaking about his corner of the world because, he goes up against Minnesota's tackles. He went up against the Jets' tackles. Minnesota's tackles are Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill. O'Neill's 6'7", 320 with long arms, and he's a really good offensive lineman, really good pass protector. Darrisaw's even better. Darrisaw's a left tackle, first-round pick, blue chipper, probably the next version of Trent Williams. He's right there with the great left tackles in the game. Christian Darrisaw, he's a fantastic player, 6'5", long arms, super tough, former defensive lineman, converted to the offensive line in college there at Vatech, and he's tough, man. He's got great feet, long arms. It's going to be a tough day for Bosa and Floyd against the Minnesota tackles, where last week they got Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses, and even though Tyron's going to Canton, he's also 33. He's had tons of injuries. Morgan Moses is also 33. They don't move as well as these guys. They don't have the same arm length. They don't have the same strength. They probably do have the same arm length, I should say, but they don't quite have the same. Darrisaw is in the super prime. O'Neill's in his prime. Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses are past their prime. I think that's really the difference between last week and this week. But it was an interesting comment by Bosa nonetheless. Interested to see what they say about Aaron Banks in his calf injury. He didn't seem like he was worried about it. I talked to him in the locker room after the game. He didn't seem concerned that he wasn't going to go in this game. He's been practicing. Also, I thought it was kind of interesting. The NFL Network had their predictions on Niners-Vikings. Well, I'm sure they predict every game. They have 10 people making predictions. 9 of them went with the Niners. over the Vikings. From MJD to Colleen Wolfe to everybody over there, and some of these people, Adam Rank, they all had the Niners beating the Vikings. The one guy who didn't, Daniel Jeremiah. Daniel Jeremiah says the Vikings are going to beat the 49ers. He says the final is going to be 28-24. Couple interesting things I think to look at, also looking back at the snap counts from this week against the Jets. J.P. Mason had 58 snaps. 58 snaps, 28 carries for 147 for Mason. I'm eager to see how he bounces back if he looks as fresh this week against Minnesota. That's a ton of snaps and a lot of carries for J.P. Mason, so we'll see how he bounces back. The other interesting notes I thought was Trent played 70 snaps, only 2 less than the full boat. Ayuk played 43 snaps last week. Spencer Burford off the bench played 16 snaps, and Isaac Guerrero played 3 snaps. I would expect Guerrendo's going to get more run this week. The other surprise number of snaps on offense was Ronnie Bell. He played 13 snaps. I didn't realize he played that much. On defense, and I think this was one of the keys of the game, Bosa, 48 snaps. Floyd, 34 snaps. Big Hargrave had 32 snaps. Big Collins in the middle had 37. The Niners' front four, their first team defensive line averaged only 30 snaps played per game in this game against the Jets. That's awesome. Man, if they can keep it at that level, Sorensen is going to love life, and the Niners are going to be loving life as well. I mean, when you can win, see, this is the who benefits when you pound the rock and run the heck out of the football? Your defensive line, because the Niner defensive line is kind of thin, and I think they need to play complementary football early in the year, and that's what they did in week 1. They came out and they played run the ball, complementary football, and protected their D-line, and I loved it. And I'm going to ask Sorensen about it when we talk to him later today. I thought that was one of the keys of the game. I mean, you go back to that Bengals game, Bosa and those guys played like 68 snaps. That's way too many. That's a huge stat. You want to talk about a big stat between winning and losing? How many snaps does your D-line play? If they average 30, the Niners are going to win. If they average close to 70, the Niners are going to struggle, they're going to lose, and they're going to be injured in those games. Also, PFF, interesting nuggets on PFF. Their top 5 highest graded Niners on offense, the number 5 highest graded Niner, Colton McKivitz, who played 70 snaps, and they gave him a pretty good grade. So those people ripping Colton McKivitz, maybe you should pump the brakes on that. They had Purdy, Trent, Pooney, Jauan, Jennings, and Colton as number 5. I know you're sitting there going, what? No Jordan Mason in the top 5, and that's true. He was 6th on the list. And then defensively, the only reason I would kind of question PFF is they've got Leonard Floyd and DFF, Demetrius Flanagan Fowles, as having 3 of the lowest grades. Flanagan Fowles had a pick. He had one play where he spilled the run to the outside. I thought that was a nice play. Floyd had played 20 pass rush snaps. He had a 21% pass rush rate. He had 4 pressures and a sack and had 2 stops against the run. And he's one of the lowest rated guys. That's why sometimes I look at those PFF numbers and I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I put a ton of credence, because Leonard Floyd had a great freaking game and he gets one of the lowest grades. Other people would say McKivitz didn't have a great game and he got one of the highest grades. Either way, the 5 highest graded Niner defenders, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Mooney Ward, Isaac Yiadom, and Jordan Elliott. Good to see Yiadom and Elliott highly graded, but Warner got the highest grade of any 49er for the week. So there you go. There's a breakdown. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Go say hi to Damon. Go say hi to Mary. Get some brisket chili. Tell them that Krug sent you. And also thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're at 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California, along the Monterey Peninsula. Call my friend Anthony Catania at 831-521-5264. And thanks to both of them for being proud sponsors of the Krug Show. And we're down here in Santa Clara, and we'll be on tonight. Check us out on KMBR's YouTube channel from 6 to 7 on KMBR's YouTube channel on the Sports Leader.